Once a month, when the moon reaches its highest point in the sky and the wild creatures call out to the night, he emerges from a private sanctuary in an undisclosed location outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. Arrayed in his priestly vestments, carrying forth the good news that comic books and graphic novels aren't just for kids, that they aren't just mass and spandex superheroes, that storytelling in a graphic format can be so much more. He is the Graphic Novel Apostle.
Hello and welcome back to the Graphic Novel Apostle podcast. It's so good to be back here with you again on this Monday morning. It is one of our in-between weeks from when we have our larger episodes, and so normally this would be a mini episode, but I wanted to do something a little bit different this week. One of the conceits of the podcast is that I'm bringing on friends who don't normally read comic books to talk to. And I said in some of the earlier episodes of this podcast that I don't really have comic friends that I can talk to otherwise. And that's true for my real life, but I've probably failed to say and ought to have said that I found some really cool communities online where there are different people who are interested in this medium and the great storytelling of all different types that's going on there. And one of those places is there's another podcast that I just absolutely love called the Two-Headed Nerd Podcast. And the hosts of that show, Matt and Joe, run a Discord server for their listeners. And our guest today is somebody that I have gotten to know a little bit through interacting there. Also a podcast host, a double podcast host, and a burgeoning comic creator, comic writer. And I am really excited to have her on the show today. So I'd like to introduce to you the host of the Giant Size Violence, a Toku comics podcast, as well as the Transcending Comics podcast, a podcast dedicated to covering trans, non-binary, and genderqueer representation in comics, manga, and webtoons, as well as, if that's not enough, the writer of the currently being kickstarted When We Transform, a superhero tale of transition, a tokusatsu and the trans experience comics. I have with me today Tomi Trembath.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Yeah, I totally forgot it was through the Two-Headed Nerd that we found each other. I thought we just followed each other's podcasts elsewhere. But yeah, I love the Two-Headed Nerd. They're probably my favorite ongoing comic coverage show. And I like what I've heard of your show so far. Your I Kill Giants episode was especially great.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to listen too. And likewise, I have enjoyed listening to episodes from both of your podcasts. Both of those podcasts deal with types of comics that I might not encounter otherwise. And so it's been really cool to have that type of exposure. In fact, I'll tell you, with the Giant Size Violence Comics podcast, I did not know what Toku was. I have only in the last couple of years become familiar with even what the idea of a kaiju is. Of course, I'd always known about Godzilla and that kind of thing. But then I saw Toku and I thought, well, that's something else that's new. In fact, for the uninitiated, could you explain a little bit about what Giant Size Violence and Toku is?
Yeah, so Giant Size Violence was my first solo run podcast. It was originally started as the first fan podcast to Ultra Mega by James Herron, which is kind of like an R-rated Hellboy spin on Ultraman, which is a huge Japanese superhero. And as the show progressed and Ultra Mega went on hiatus, I decided to expand my focus to other books in the same vein, which is how I discovered the term tokusatsu, which is the term for like Japanese special effects films usually. It's mainly associated with kaiju movies like Godzilla and Gamera, and transforming superhero shows and movies like Power Rangers, Kamen Rider, Ultraman. And like, I grew up absolutely loving Power Rangers, but like, it's very much a show that's made for young children, as it should be, and I hope it always is that way. But there's something about my brain and what I look for in superhero media that, like, if there's transforming heroes or if there's 5 little robots that combine into a bigger robot, like, that's what makes the neurons in my brain light up, and I'm here for it. So I've kind of used this podcast as a means of finding other things that people who grew up loving things like Power Rangers and the other knockoff shows from the 90s, more mature media that they'd like now, like Ultra Mega or some of the Massiveverse books, many of the other books we've covered on the show so far.
Well, how fun. And that is not, I was just a little too old for Power Rangers. We did another episode recently with my friend Travell, who was a Power Rangers fanatic growing up. And he's a little bit younger than me, and I just missed that boat. Sounds like a really fun genre to tell stories in. So let's talk about Transcending Comics too, your other podcast.
Yeah, so about 2.5 years into Giant Sized Violence, I kind of came to terms with my own identity as a trans woman. I did a big psychedelic coming out episode, kind of unlike anything I've heard on another podcast to this day.
It's quite the episode.
Yeah, to those out there, if you only check out one episode of any of my stuff, look up my episode. It's Morphin Time from February of last year on Giant Sized Violence. I promise it's not like anything you've heard before, and it won't disappoint.
No, it won't.
Yeah. And side note, I just got the notification today that it's been nominated for Episode of the Year and Best Production in the Iowa Podcast Awards. So it's not just me blowing smoke up this episode. Others think it's good too.
Congratulations. That's wonderful to hear.
Thank you. And as for Transcending Comics, so after coming out, I had a couple other people in the trans comic scene and comic podcasting that I started to connect with. And I found out that there wasn't a dedicated trans comic book podcast out there. There are great trans hosts on great comic podcasts like My Marvelous Year and Jay and Miles Explaining the X-Men, but nothing dedicated specifically to trans representation in comic books and the comic book industry. So being a trans woman, a podcaster, and a lover of comics, I figured I have the skill set and the passion to do something about that. So I think it's my responsibility to fill that void. And so Transcending Comics was born, and we've had an incredible first year so far. It's, for the most part, an interview podcast, and we've had some awesome guests on there, like Charlie Jane Anders, Archie Bon Giovanni from A Quick Easy Guide to They Them Pronouns, Jadzia Axelrod. And this week we're hitting our 1-year anniversary, and to celebrate, I'm going to New York City to host my first ever live panel at FlameCon with a bunch of my previous guests like Ben Kahn, Kim Wong, Daniel Falco, as well as Maya Kobabe from Genderqueer. So yeah, like my biggest podcasting event so far.
Well, congratulations on 1 year in the books, and by the time this episode airs, your panel will have already taken place in New York City, and best of luck to you with that. What is the title or the subject of the panel?
The panel is just called Transcending Comics, Trans and Non-Binary Comic Creators Q&A. So I'm mostly just facilitating the discussion. I've got my own list of interview questions to kick things off. Then I'll be facilitating audience questions from there. But yeah, it's going to be great. Like, I've not really done any interviews in person with my guests yet, other than my partner and roommate for some of our book club episodes. But yeah, it's going to be great to finally get to meet a few of these folks in person, exchange comics. And yeah, I'm just really excited to finally get that in-person connection with all these people I've been fans of for quite some time.
Well, that'll be fantastic. I wish you the very best with that. So as we talk about these two different interests that you wanted to explore with your two separate podcasts, you've now combined them with wanting to start this new comic series. Right now, you've got a crowdfunding going on Kickstarter. That campaign is continuing, and when this releases, there will be about 12 days left in the campaign. With 18 days left as of this recording, you're already at the 75% mark on your fundraising goal, so it looks to me like you are cruising to victory here, and I that's wonderful. I'm a backer and look forward to seeing the final product. So the comic is When We Transform, a superhero tale of transition. Can you tell us a little bit about the comic?
Yeah, When We Transform is something that me and one of my main co-hosts and collaborators from Giant Sized Violence and beforehand, we've been working on this and world building for literally 3 or 4 years now at this point. This whole idea started with us wanting to create a world of our own where we could play with these different ideas, kind of centering around kaiju and transforming heroes, like a world where the Power Rangers and Godzilla and Sailor Moon and Evangelion and Ultraman could all kind of interact in one sandbox. And the main storyline that we had in mind, even early on, before certain like queer and trans elements came into play, was like, hey, what if something like a Power Ranger like tried to transform twice, or something went wrong in that transformation sequence we see every week, and they got stuck in wherever that weird interdimensional morphin time space is, and didn't come out for like 20, 30 years, and find themselves in a world where like their team doesn't exist anymore and everything's kind of gone to hell.
Looking at the introductory information that you have available on your Kickstarter campaign, it looks like this tale in particular is being told through the eyes of the mother of our main character, who is visiting the grave of her lost hero.
Yeah, and that was kind of a problem-solving story device we had come up with there, because when I was trying to make just like a 5 or 6 page proof of concept comic in the early days of this, there was so much to introduce in just a few pages, and I didn't know how best to cram like multiple seasons worth of storytelling and character progression in that little a time, until it hit me that like, wait, the other people in David's life wouldn't know all these details. Like his mom would probably know very little. So like, what was this like for a main character like David and his parents, or his mom, as she's coming to find all this out and learning that like her kid's not dead, but possibly something worse, like caught in some other space, still alive. And so this kind of gave us a way that we could frame all of these huge life-changing events into a few pages from the perspective of someone who wasn't actually there, that was just kind of aware of them secondhand. And after I'd written the first 6 pages of this as their own standalone story, a lot had happened over the next year or two. I came out as a trans woman, and the thought occurred to me while I was bored in a work meeting one day of like, hey, how would this person come out to their parents? Like if they like came out on the other side as a trans person and had to like approach this parent that thinks they're dead, and rather than showing the disastrous coming out like we get in a lot of media, like what's the best case scenario for something like this? And so I had a little notepad in front of me, and I just started writing the dialogue for how I imagined a conversation like that would go. It looked like I was taking very studious notes in the work meeting, but my mind was miles away. But yeah, so that kind of became 2 more about 7 or 8 page follow-up short stories that I then bundled together into this first issue 0 that I have here. That's currently what's on Kickstarter. So it does tell one cohesive story about like this mom and her daughter's experience. But yeah, it was written as 3 separate short comics that were just easy to bundle together later on. And the way I like to describe it is that this lets me get to the queer part right away with a story like this. Like part of my intention in telling this story was that like I wanted to tell the trans superhero story where we take our time to like see this character slowly come to that realization. Like most other trans superheroes, they've either already come out at the start of the first issue, or like within that first issue they figure out they're trans. And while we're kind of playing with some of that here, like with the series going forward as it continues, like we're going to be starting from David's first day on this superhero team, the Light Patrol, and working up into that point and showing the signs and how they have that slow realization, and how that's something they can have in the 2010s, 2020s, but don't really have the resources to discover in the 1990s. Yeah, so this way I can still have that like earned natural progression of this character's journey of self-realization, but I'm also not going to blindside anyone when that happens. And like the thing that I'm most passionate about this comic, I get to get out right away and tell like if I can only tell one story in this world, this is the story I want to tell. And so I can be satisfied if things don't come to fruition elsewhere, as long as I've gotten to tell this one story.
Now, you have this planned out as sort of a 2-year overarching story that you'd like to tell, assuming things go well with this initial Kickstarter campaign. What does that look like if everything goes the way you'd like it to, in terms of number of issues, multiple campaigns, or whether it would all be one big original graphic novel? What do you foresee there?
So I'm seeing a 3-stage release from this point forward. So this first Kickstarter for the issue 0 is both to like kind of get the series out there, raise some attention, and also get us a good reader base as we launch the series going forward as a webcomic first. We're going to be using platforms like Patreon mainly, possibly with Substack on the side, as our main way of releasing the comic and funding the comic as it's being made. Since I'm just the writer, I have to spend a lot of money hiring artists and colorists and letterers to adapt my scripts. So this way I can at least make some of that money back as the book is being produced. Once we have about a season or a story arc worth of content finished, we'll be doing a second tier release on platforms like Webtoon and Tapas, and that I'm hoping to help really build the momentum and readership, since, like, for those that don't know, a best-selling single issue of a comic book from Marvel or DC is lucky to sell around 100,000 copies in a year. Whereas a mildly successful webtoon, like ones that aren't even in the top 20, will be in the millions of readers for their chapters. And so I want to get that big international readership to then help us steamroll future physical releases of the book from there. So we'll get that added readership from Webtoon, funnel that into Kickstarter campaigns or other means of doing like larger physical releases of like trade collections or future single issues. So that way we kind of cover all of our bases from, like web comics readers, Webtoon readers, and physical comic readers. Just all at different times, but we have something for everyone, and there's physical proof that this book exists out there. It's not something that some angry or potentially failing business platform could wipe from existence.
Well, very good. Do you have the 2-year story that you'd like to tell already plotted out? Do you know where it's starting and where it's ending? Or how detailed is that outline?
Let's see. It's not quite to the chapter by chapter phase, but I at least do have the events lined up. And I'm really glad it's taken me this long to come out with this story, since if like my first draft version of this had happened, we'd just be dealing with an anthology of different characters and then one big crossover at the end of a maybe slightly oversized issue. Because I've taken my time and had a lot of time to be exposed to very different media outside of my comfort zone, I've had some really good ideas of how I can like slowly explore this and get into the character side of things rather than just like the big flashy robots and monsters side of things. We're going to be doing things a little different than I originally anticipated. Like, we're going to be telling a story that's happening in at least 2 time periods at the same time, but I have an idea of where I want both those time periods to end at the end of this first season or first arc. Kind of how like a show like Arrow or Lost would like show the character's life in the city or in like the modern world, and then like juxtapose that with their life on the island. So we kind of have that A plot and B plot, but following the same characters, so we don't have to get that same level of development or investment in 2 entirely separate groups of characters in a single story arc.
Sure. And so I guess following the 0 issue, we should have a pretty good sense of who this person is and at least some of what their story is going to entail that I guess will be pretty slowly unfolding then over that series. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. Let's go back to the 0 issue that you're crowdfunding right now. Tell us a little bit about the creative team that you've assembled around you.
Yeah, there's me and Jason Bryant. It's been me and him that have been brainstorming this world for years now. Like, we have documents on documents full of like world events and what the history of this world looks like. A lot of this will probably never make it onto the page, but also in this time it's taken from the story's inception to now, Jason has gotten really into making audio dramas. So before the end of the year, I believe we should be seeing a When We Transform audio drama that kind of ties in with this book.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah, even though he's mostly been like my main consultant and like creative feedback person and the guy that helped me figure out how to both make a comic and a podcast, yeah, he's still very much involved in building out the world and some of the characters close to his heart and what we've made so far. Beyond that, we have Carlos Amarim, who is our colorist, and Gabriel Facina, who did the pencils and inks on the book. And I actually found both of them through a subreddit of like r/comic book collabs. I think that subreddit can be a little hard to find talent there. There are a lot of scammers and bots that have kind of infiltrated it. I hope they've dealt with that issue a bit. but we just kind of got in at the right time, found a couple really talented people that both happen to be in Brazil. They've been just excellent to work with and bringing the story to life. Really, the art is the first thing that jumps out to most people. Like, people notice the colors or also the pencils and inks and like just say like, this doesn't look like someone's first comic book. And I totally credit that to those two. Yeah, they've been making other comics before. I know Gabriel has even done one or two other Kickstarter comics, like a Warlock, D&D kind of live play tabletop adaptation. Also, just want to shout out as well Amal Desai, who did the lettering. He also did a lot with like formatting the pages, coming up with a logo for us. And pretty much all three of those people, Gabriel Facina, Carlos Amarim, and Amal Desai, are usually taking commission work. I know Carlos especially is looking for some coloring jobs right now. So if there are any aspiring comic creators out there, please do look them up. You can find their contact details on the Kickstarter because they are excellent to work with and you'll be really happy with the final product.
Fantastic. And there is going to be another use of color in this comic that's going to be something unlike, I guess, the world has ever seen before. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what circles you're in, but the world of comics hasn't seen anything like this. We're doing a special edition for the higher tiers of the book. That's going to be a first of its kind color-changing comic book. Now, readers of Radiant Black may have seen that they did a couple blacklight issues of the book. There have been a couple other blacklight reactive comics before that, which is probably the closest thing to this that's existed, but this is like taking blacklights and taking it to the next level. We worked with a company called Colorimetry Lights that does psychedelic art prints and takes them to music festivals and gives this amazing interactive experience with them. And I've worked with them to bring this idea to life. If I can give you a quick origin story of how I stumbled into this. I was at Electric Forest with my partner last year, and as we're walking through their little marketplace area, this guy comes up to us and he's like, hey, we've got this free psychedelic experience going on. It's a sober experience. There's no line. Just take this light and like hold it up to things and they'll start changing in there. And yeah, he leads us into this like dark, completely blacked out tent. And he gives us this handheld color changing light with like a bunch of different modes that flash in different patterns and different colors, sequences. And we start holding it up to the pictures and like, sure enough, the colors of the pictures change, or like there's a sense of movement that happens on the page. Some of these things even have like hidden images in the background that only come out in certain moments or under certain like light modes on this colorizer light they've given us. And of course, as soon as we walk in, this was when my edible set in. And okay. So like, I'm blown away by the artwork, but like I'm now feeling like, okay, this is blowing my mind. Anything's possible. There's like a portable air conditioner on the floor, so I hold the colorizer light up to that. I'm like, is this gonna change? Is this part of it? Is this gonna be like a Decepticon? It was not. It was just a fan, sadly, but still the artwork incredible. Blew me away. We bought a bunch of it to bring home with us, and like I have this weird little tanning closet that came with my house that I've never intentionally used, so I just put all the artwork around that and have this amazing little art installation in my house now just with these posters and these handheld lights. So getting to be in on this experience of introducing people to this artwork, I was like, hey, I want to be the first person to do this in a comic. And so I got a hold of the owners of the company. They work with artists from across the globe in helping make these psychedelic art prints that are reactive to their light. They put me in touch with an artist, C1 Art or Sion Art, and he's even done comic work before, just not with their colorizer effect. And so, yeah, he did a variant cover for me first. I then realized like, hey, we've got these trippy transformation sequences and like other dimensional space, and I want to give people more bang for their buck if they're spending all the money to get this handheld light. So the special edition has a variant cover and 3 interior pages that react to this light. Because I know that isn't a huge number considering the buy-in, we're also throwing in either posters or art print books. So you'll get several different art prints that'll react to this light. And we're going to be giving you a combo deal that's equivalent to what you'd be getting if you found colorimetry lights at a festival or went to their site directly. So even if you're just getting one about 25-page comic, you're still getting your money's worth with that higher investment and the higher tier on the Kickstarter.
How cool.
Yeah, it's something I'm really excited to bring to the world of Comic-Cons as well. I've only been to one so far with the color changing setup, but yeah, colorimetry has only been to music festivals, and it's been so fun to bring this to Comic-Cons and just have people stumble in and be like, I'm not high enough for this. But yeah, it's unlike anything else that you'll find on a con floor. So I'm currently doing that power crawl of going from like small regional cons, and I'm hoping to get into bigger ones next year, like C2E2 or at least some of the main like capital city Comic Cons, Planet Comic Con, things like that. Just slowly working my way up to the bigger events, since it costs a lot to buy into that, and you got to be kind of lucky to make your money back.
For sure, for sure. And if people want to see a sample of what that color changing looks like, you have a short video that's attached to your Kickstarter campaign that's linked right there that people can jump in and get a look at. And it really is pretty wild.
Yeah. And also, if you look me up on TikTok, I believe I'm at Keymaster Collective on there. You can also see a quick video of our art setup that we did at Planet FunkCon in Davenport, Iowa, and just get a sense of like what this looks like and how these react to your handheld lights. So yeah, we've certainly got demos, and I really suggest people look into them because yeah, this is something we've never seen in comics before. So it's something that's really hard to sell off of a description alone if people have no visual reference for something like this.
Sure. Well, we'll have a link to your Kickstarter page in the show notes for this episode. And so people can go over there and take a look. And if you just want to check out the comic, there's a $5 backer reward for a digital copy of the book. So it's a pretty low barrier to entry. And then, of course, a bunch of other, physical tiers for copies of the comic, or up to those larger tiers where you can get the colorimetry lights and extra pages. So, Tommy, I wish you the very best. I know we need to get you off to FlameCon right now.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that goes great for you, and I'm looking forward to reading this comic when it comes out.
Thanks so much for having me on, Mark. Your show is great. I really appreciate you making the time on short notice. But yeah, I'm waking up at about 4 a.m. tomorrow to get to FlameCon. So,
oh boy. Well,
appreciate you.
Good luck with that. I will look forward to checking out more of what you do with your podcasts as well. And to everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. We will be back next Monday, and keep reading those comics.